travel is such a natural place for us to go and explore, who are we now? Who do we want to become? What's important to us, right? Sort of clean the slate, play with different parts of who we are. And so I think that these societal implications are really starting to open people up and shift how they're seeing themselves and how they fit into the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Travel Trends Season 6 finale episode. This is your host, Dan Christian, and this is the episode that many of our listeners have been waiting for, the return of Joe Pine and Jake Haupert. They joined us at the end of Season 5, and Joe Pine, of course, is the legendary author of The Experience Economy, and Jake Haupert is the founder of the Transformational Travel Council. They joined us for our second series on experiences, and it was such a popular series, and that episode was such a huge standout. We agreed to have them back to close out Season 6, and the timing couldn't be better because Joe Pine has just published his book, The Transformation Economy. And that's what we talk about in today's episode, as well as all the developments with the Transformational Travel Council in 2026. But before I welcome them back to the show, I just wanted to provide a few updates and share a few acknowledgements. The first thing I just wanted to say is a huge thank you to all of our listeners for your feedback and for your contributions over the course of Season 6. We just ran our contest with Hayes Luggage to have our listeners share their highlights from Season 6 and what they're looking forward to in Season 7. We have posted the 3 winners of those luggage sets on our blog. Thanks and congratulations to each of you. But everyone that contributed over the course of this season, sharing updates, posting comments, it was really wonderful to hear from you and also to get that positive feedback to know where we should take the podcast in Season 7. And we have huge plans for 2026. One of them is a big shift towards video recordings, both live at events as well as remote in the new studio that I have set up for Season 7. I'll come back to more details on that in a moment. But I also wanted to send a special thank you to all the guests that joined us over the course of Season 6. Every episode is a must listen from my point of view. So if you didn't catch all the episodes, go back and have a look and see which are ones that are most meaningful and relevant to you. We have had so many episodes of our show become required listening for companies in the travel industry, and I hear that at events, and you heard it also when I was speaking to Travis from Tour Radar, as a previous episode on social commerce became required listening for their entire team, and I brought Travis on in Season 6 to talk about that episode, what it meant to their business, to their team, and how they applied that strategy going forward and are having great success. So for me, the ultimate validation is getting that feedback, and really it comes from our guests coming on the podcast and sharing really valuable advice that will help other people in their careers or grow their travel companies. And that was been my mission since creating this podcast over 3 years ago. I'm delighted that we have listeners now in 125 countries, and we continue to grow as we have new topics. And we've gone now from doing 1 episode a week to 3 episodes every week in 2026. And on that note, I want to thank our team because they have really stepped up to enable us to expand our production, which now includes our YouTube channel, TikTok, all the social channels. We create clips and highlights, as you often hear me say. But we also now are making a significant commitment to move into video, but also produce more content. So every Tuesday we have a custom series, and every Thursday we have a spotlight episode, and every Wednesday will continue to be our main weekly episode of Season 7 and Season 8. And I also just wanted to acknowledge all of our sponsors who have made these conversations possible. We couldn't have done this without you, Propelic, We Road, Civitatis, Captio, Holofly, and PayCompass. And I'm delighted that Propelic, Civitatis, Captio, Holofly, Intrepid are all now coming back for Season 7, and we have many significant partnerships planned for this year. But I just wanted to acknowledge all of our sponsors, both our title sponsors and our theme sponsors, that enable us to have those conversations in those 3-part episodes to dive into a topic. So thanks to each of you as well. And I wanted to share a few quick updates with all of our listeners as we wrap up Season 6 and prepare for Season 7. I have a rather ambitious event schedule that we have highlighted on our social channels and on LinkedIn. You can find it on traveltrendspodcast.com/events. I am going to be at ITB Berlin very shortly. I will be speaking at the Get Your Guide headquarters on the Monday. And then on the Wednesday, I'll be hosting a panel in the tours and activities section. I'll be recording podcasts as well with our friends over at the Adventure Travel and Trade Association booth. So look for me there. I will then be doing a 3-part keynote series at the Virtuoso conferences, which I'm really looking forward to. And then I'll be at Arrival in Valencia at the end of April. All of our listeners, there's a $100 Euro discount you can find on our website. I strongly encourage you to join us, especially those of you who are in multi-day. I'm emceeing that stream, and there will be a lot of amazing multi-day tour companies there. They're also going to be in Australia and then Spokane later this year. We're also the official podcast partner for the Aviation Festival of the Americas, which is in Miami in June, as well as the Adventure Travel and Trade Association, who have multiple events coming up, and the flagship ATWS later this year. But definitely check out our events page, because wherever we're recording an event spotlight, you always have the opportunity to join us. So make sure that you find out where we're going to be and reach out to me, Dan at Travel Trends Podcast, if you're going to be at any of these events. It'd be great to meet our listeners in person and record together with you if possible. Now, our plan for season 7, it starts March 4th. And will be full video from the moment we launch. We have 5 themes lined up, but 3 of them are completely new themes based on interest from our listeners and our partners. We're going to be focusing on sun holidays, luxury hotels, and agentic AI, and bringing back 2 of our most popular themes, experiences and loyalty. And we have a number of one-off episodes planned on sports tourism in 2026, wellness, luxury travel. But let's get back to the moment we've been waiting for, the season 6 finale of Travel Trends with our friends Joe Pine and Jake Haupert. I just want to encourage everyone to order Joe Pine's book, The Transformation Economy. You can get more information at his Substack page, which is transformationsbook.substack.com. He also runs Strategic Horizons and does a number of speaking engagements. He's got a toolkit on his website that you can check out to help companies work through these ideas, principles, and the frameworks that are provided in the book. So we will definitely be following his journey and sharing more on our social channels, but definitely order the book. And our friend Jake has also offered all of our listeners a free guide to get started with transformative design from the Transformational Travel Council. You can see what's happening in the state of the industry and ways to connect with transformative design projects like we talk about in this episode. You can pair that together with Joe's book, which will give you a fantastic foundation. So check out more information at transformational.travel/get started. Transformational.travel/get started. Now let's bring these guys both back into the conversation. Joe and Jake, welcome back to Travel Trends. It's a real pleasure to have you guys back on the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here. This is actually a record. This is the 3rd time I've done a podcast with you in like 7 months. So it's always been a pleasure. I am in my home office in beautiful Stillwater, Minnesota, and about ready to head out this afternoon, but wanted to get this podcast in first.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. Really appreciate you making the time for this. Obviously, it's been a huge honor for me to have you on the podcast 3 times. And just so all of our listeners know, they heard from that introduction, you joined us with Jake to close out season 5. We're closing out season 6 here today. You also kindly joined us for the Arrival Spotlight episode, which I strongly encourage anyone that hasn't listened to that to check out that episode, because Joe's terrific in that as well. But today we also have Jake joining us. And Jake, of course, you and Joe work so closely together. Joe is going on his book tour, and everyone heard from my introduction how I referenced this as the year of transformative travel. I strongly believe that. I know you both do as well. And it couldn't be more perfect to have you joining us as well, given you run the Transformational Travel Council. So I want you to jump in here, tell all of our listeners where you are at the moment and some of your plans for 2026.
Yeah, it's great to be back, and it's awesome to be working with Joe. He's been pretty busy lately, as you might imagine, with the book launch. But things are going really good. You know, you mentioned this being the year of transformative travel, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it. And I was just teaching our course this morning and going back to some of the early days, and it was Vogue magazine that called it the trend of 2017. So we've come a long way. And what I appreciate about where we are now, and I talked to Joe about this yesterday, is it's now transcending as a buzzword. Now it's about how do you do it, right? And that's what the book is so good at outlining. And so, with the TTC, we're really focused on providing more opportunities for engagement and connection and shared learning, both virtually and in person.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, obviously, you have the travel industry background, experience, passion. You and I are very similar in a number of ways, which is why I think we get along so well and look forward to seeing each other in person. And and part of what I want to make sure we achieve in this discussion together for all of our global listeners is having someone like Joe Pine, who, as you may have heard, Joe, one of our recent guests on our podcast, Michael Zeisser, who is a legendary investor, who is, often referred to himself as the Warren Buffett of the experience economy. And he gives full credit to you and refers to you as the intellectual godfather of the concept. But he's done very well investing on your recommendation and advice. So, but what I wanted to do as we have this conversation together is tie together the Transformation Economy, this landmark book that Joe has just published, with the work that you're doing at TTC, given this is the background is the two of you guys working together. So you are taking those concepts, Jake, and applying them to travel. But before we do that, let's go back to the Transformation Economy. Everyone, and I'm going to just move on from our first episode because everyone should know who Joe Pine is. Everyone should have read The Experience Economy. That was required reading to listen to this episode. Tell us a little bit, Joe, about the Transformation Economy, the book itself, why you published it this year, and give everyone a bit more context. I know I mentioned the Substack that I followed and, as you were writing this book, but I'd love for you to give all of our listeners a bit of an overview of the Transformation Economy book that you've published.
Well, in fact, the Transformation Economy has, as a topic, not as a book, has been around from the very beginning of when I discovered the experience economy. I also asked, well, what's next? And said, well, it's got to be transformations. It's got to be life-changing experiences. So, in fact, the last two chapters of the experience economy talk about transformations. But, I've been asked for over 25 years now, when are you going to write a full book on it? And my response was, well, one, the world's not ready for it, and two, I don't know enough about it. And that's what's changed. And that's why I started writing the book in beginning of 2024. And then, the book process of writing and publishing, just takes that long to get it out now. I was really hoping for last September as a book launch, but that's the way it goes. And one of the key things is, I have learned a lot more about it in the last 5, 6, 7 years, but I learned so much even more about it in the writing, and that happens with all my books. I don't know everything about the subject. I got to figure it out as I'm going along. You can see all the books behind me. I do a heck of a lot of research, a lot of reading, articles, books, and other things, and interviewing companies and executives and figuring out what they're doing. Then all that comes together in developing new frameworks and new ideas and principles that end up in the final product.
Fantastic. And clearly, as I highlighted in the introduction, the book is out. People can order it. I have not read the book yet, but I will be reading it very shortly. And so I just wanted to share that context with some of the questions that I have for you, simply because it wasn't an option for me in advance of recording this. But I absolutely am looking forward to reading it because, I'm the biggest fan of you and the experience economy, and that inspired my career. And I'm excited for what I believe will be the whole idea of transformative travel entering the zeitgeist this year. And many of our listeners know that I published an article to start off 2026 where I see transformative travel as being the biggest trend of 2026. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this podcast over the course of the year, but transformative travel couldn't be more important as an overall commercial objective for so many companies to realize this is how you need to be marketing and messaging, but you also need to, and this is where it comes to Jake, do so in the right way, because just marketing and saying you're offering transformative experiences isn't going to work for very long when you get figured out. So I want to make sure that anyone listening to this, and I do expect that this will become required listening for many companies in the travel industry and potentially even beyond that want to understand the transformation economy and how it should be applied. But tell us a little bit, Joe, as you've gotten to know this industry, we've seen each other at a couple of conferences over the last year. You have a lot of interest within the travel industry itself. For people like me that are reading your book and looking to apply those insights to travel, what do you think are the most transferable elements? What are the things that, as you are writing it and you're thinking about the travel industry, that are the most applicable?
So two things. One, I'll mention is I didn't know until we were together at that Arrival conference last September. One of the things that happens is I always continue to learn more, and I actually have a file of things I wish were in the book. So maybe if I do a second edition, I can keep track of that. And so one of the things I came up for that Arrival conference is that the economic function of transformations is guiding. And so, you extract commodities out of the ground, you make or manufacture goods, you deliver services, you stage experiences, right? Intentionally design all the elements. And transformation is built on top of experiences. So it's always an experience that transforms us, but you guide transformations, right? Because people change themselves. And you can't force it. Well, you could force them to change, but there's very bad results that come from that. But you can't force people to change. They change themselves. So you're a guide. That's your economic function. Every transformation is guided. And when I realized at Arrival, when I started talking to people and how very many of them were often from small companies, but were often tour guides, right? They're guiding tours. And so one of the things I said in my presentation now that I think is very important for everyone in the transformation travel industry is recognize don't guide tours, guide people in a tour, right? And it's guiding people that you're doing. And if you just have that mindset that I'm not guiding, what's out there that I'm talking about, I'm guiding you who are in front of me, right, within this greater context of what's going on and what we're traveling to. And the second thing is and I tell people that if you stage experiences, this is the framework, right? This is the thing you need to do. If you ignore everything else, right, you will guide transformations. And it's what I call encapsulation. And encapsulation is just like the most appropriate word I could think of for what many companies, and Jake should jump in after I'm done because the TTC exemplifies this. But many companies naturally do this, and there's a ton of academic research that says this is what you need to do, right? So encapsulation is preparation beforehand, then you have the experience, then you reflect afterward, and then you integrate on an ongoing basis. So if you prepare people for the experience, you prime them for the experience, get them excited about it, get them anticipating what might happen, get them thinking about what effect it might have on them, even if they're not going into it with any sort of aspiration, even if they're just going on a great trip, but get them thinking about themselves and where they're at in their lives and what possibilities might be. Then you have the experience where you recognize that travel is when we are most open to change. When we get out of our daily quotidian lives and open ourselves up to new vistas is when change much more naturally happens than any other place. So then the reflection then reflects back on that and says, what were the highlights of this trip? And I'll say trip, but actually it's like every day. You should be reflecting at the end of every day. Every day is its own experience within the greater whole. And what were the highlights? What effect did it have on me? What might it spark in what I might want to do in the future, what I might want to see in the future, what I might want to be in the future? And reflection retroactively increases the value of the experience. Right? If you just do that, even if you're just a regular experienced stager, don't have any aspirations for transformation, it retroactively increases, it cements the memories, it gets people want to talk about it more, to tell other people about it, increases the chances they want to go on it again. And then finally, where most companies don't do is that integration. Is stay in contact, do things, help remind them of what they're trying to do, or it dissipates over time, right? And that's the TTC, Jake, you talk about Eric Rupp's book, Path, right? The Path formula is encapsulation perfectly. So you might want to mention that.
Well, totally. So Jake, this is exactly where having the two of you together is such is perfect, because it's such a symbiotic relationship you guys have. And knowing Jake, there's certain things that when Joe had mentioned it to me, our listeners would have heard, where I was just like, this is what we've been doing in travel, or this is what we've been trying to highlight about why travel is so special. So I'm sure there's things that you were already working on that Joe kind of solidified, and then other things that he brings to the table. You're like, oh, we need to act on that. But yes, tell everyone about we covered in our first episode the TTC framework. Remind everyone a bit more about what that is, because I'm keen to take one of your courses, and I know many of our listeners will be as well. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the TTC framework and how that's been influenced by Joe's work.
Yeah. It's I'll try to be brief here, but when we looked at this, travel in its holistic way of being, like, what is the purpose? Why do we travel? We decided that we needed to really dig deep and better understand human connection, human potential. And ultimately we developed a manifesto, which Joe shares at a lot of his keynotes, but also a theory of change and a foundational framework, which is essentially capturing, for us to evolve and become better versions of ourselves and continue to grow, you have to deepen your connection and relationship with yourself, with others, and with systems. So, that could be community, that could be nature, but it's intentionally using travel as this practice or this process that allows us to really evolve who we are, our perspectives, our agency, and bring that experience into our life in a meaningful way, one that endures, which is not easy, right? And he mentioned the PATH framework. It kind of mirrors the hero's journey. It is prepare, adventure, think, and honor. And so kind of following that path, understanding that travel starts, when you first hear that whisper, right? When you hear that call to adventure, like, I need to go. Something is telling me I need to go, right? And then starting to think about travel differently at that stage. And then moving in through, self-awareness and presencing and reflection and meaning making and being, grateful, and then honoring the experience, by making sure that you continue to pursue the change that you want to, the change or changes you want to make in your life. Could be small.
Which is integration.
Yeah, which is integration.
Well, give us, Jake, a good example of one of the travel companies that you engage with that has actually incorporated this into their itineraries and that have acted on this and seen real benefits. I know there are many, but yeah, give us a good example that our listeners can sink their teeth into.
Yeah. We're in our 11th cohort of our signature experience development program. And just in short, it's an accreditation. It's 6 weeks long. And it is a beautiful sort of introduction into the transformation economy and how to implement this in a practical way in your organization. So we've got quite a few alumni, but one that really stands out is Ash Swords. She's got an organization called Ase Luxury Travel. And she's dedicated to really uncovering the traveler's motivation, and having some of those harder conversations that I think is uncomfortable, frankly, for most of our industry still, to have those conversations that get people to open out about why they want to go. Are they burned out? Do they have specific goals and aspirations? Are they pondering a big life question? Right. So that stage is important, and just as important as integration. So she's completely redeveloped her customer journey to support that process through prompts and questions and through coaching. So she's a good example. We've seen this in the nonprofit space with Sea Turtles, a conservation group. Right. They've developed new principles and practices that help people deepen their relationship with their mission and vision, in conservation of sea turtles. There is an organization called Vital Ventures that's using challenge, right? So, ultra marathons and hiking and climbing as opportunities to really get out of your comfort zone and test the limits, if you will. They've adopted a lot of the experience design techniques. And also creating space for conversation and reflection in that small group setting, which I think can be really powerful. And then, we've seen some destinations really, Visit Issaquah. They've adopted it. Visit Annapolis, of all places. Heather Erst, she went through our program and she's weaving in transformative design into, with her attractions and tour operators and hoteliers across Annapolis. So there's quite a few. It's really exciting. It's emerging.
And more to come.
Well, and Joe, hearing that, because I'm sure it to you is great, gratifying to hear the impact your work has had on people, like people's lives like myself. And obviously being on book tour, you're going to hear from a lot of people like me that are going to come up to you and say things that are genuinely true, that, you know, your work has had a big impact on them. You see the impact of your work through TTC and what Jake is doing. I'm just actually curious, from what he mentioned, is there one of those that stands out to you, or is there another one that you know that you've helped inspire, where you see, you know, where it turns into action? Like you had these ideas and someone else applied them and are seeing real commercial success as a result.
Yeah. Well, one company I'll mention is here in the Minnesota area where I'm from is Symphony, right? So Symphony, but with a sim plan, and it's a financial services company. It creates what I call a transformation platform. And it's B2B2C, which is that it sells to wealth advisors who then use it directly, where they're showing them the screens and everything to create an experience for their clients there. And what it does is it really gets them to change the conversation from money, which is a means to an end, right, to what the actual ends are, which they frame as life and legacy. Right. So how is what you're saving today, what you're investing today, what you're spending today, influencing the rest of your life and what you want to accomplish in that, and the legacy that you might want to leave behind to your kids and grandkids and to nonprofits and charities and so forth. And so it really, first of all, allows them to change that conversation. So it's focused on aspirations as opposed to mere money. And then it shows them all the possibilities based on every decision that they make, that what is going to happen, you know, based on all the data that they have from almost a century of financial data of what's going on in the stocks and the bond markets and so forth, and show you, in worst case scenario and best case scenario, what you're going to have for your spending in your life, and then have left over for your legacy.
We'll be right back.
Travel has changed, but many multi-day tour operators are still stuck with spreadsheets and disconnected systems. Today's travelers expect more: choice, flexibility, unforgettable experiences without the friction. That's where Captio comes in. Built on Salesforce, Captio is the modern platform designed specifically for multi-day tour operators. From tailor-made trips to group tours, rail to river, we bring your itineraries, bookings, payments, and operations together in one seamless system. With automation, real-time inventory, and supplier integrations, we make complex travel simple so you can do what you do best: serve travelers, not spreadsheets. Check out Captio.com for more details. PayCompass is the leading merchant processor built specifically for the travel industry. PayCompass makes it easy for travel businesses to get approved with high processing limits, so operators and agencies can scale without barriers. They deliver some of the highest authorization rates in the industry, backed by powerful chargeback mitigation services that protect revenue and reputation. Plus, with tools like virtual cards, PayCompass helps travel brands manage payments smarter and more efficiently. Simply put, PayCompass isn't just a processor. They're helping travel businesses grow stronger and faster.
Dan Christian here from Travel Trends. If you're a travel advisor looking for the next big thing in group travel, then you need to know about WeRoad. WeRoad is a community-driven, small group travel brand that is designed for today's connection-seeking traveler. Their secret? About 90% of WeRoaders start solo and end up with a whole new crew of friends. These trips run in tight-knit groups and are led by one of over 4,000 trained travel coordinators whose entire mission it is to spark connection from day one. WeRoad is built for travelers in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who want same age, same language groups. And with over 300,000 travelers already on board, the demand is real. And for trade, this is where it gets exciting. WeRoad's new trade program gives advisors competitive land commissions, flexible holds, toolkits, training, dedicated support, and co-marketing opportunities. Plus, flights aren't included, meaning you control the air, ancillaries, and pre-post stays. So it's time to partner with WeRoad. Give your clients the group trip they'll actually brag about. Head to weroad.com/welcome-travel-advisors to get started. That's weroad.com/welcome-travel-advisors. And now back to the show. Let's take one kind of big step back for a moment for everyone and just talk about this concept of transformation and why it is such an important trend in 2026 and beyond. Because, with your landmark work, the experience economy, in our first conversation, Joe, I still recall asking you, or there was a specific question where I asked you about, the experience economy being an idea that everyone was aware of. And as you highlighted to me, it's like, not when we came up with it. It's like, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's actually, so now, but what I find interesting about the idea of transformation, and when I published that article that I know resonated with you both, I found it really interesting when people were resharing my LinkedIn post to start the year about transformative travel. I kind of put in from my personal experience traveling and my professional reality working in the industry, here are all the reasons that I believe that this is going to be the most important trend. And I think that, Jake, it's one of the things that, given our shared history in this industry, seeing the companies that are having success in the marketplace today, that are growing the most significantly, and that travelers are putting their hands up and saying, this is the type of experience I want now. What I always find interesting is what's driving that behavior. And I kind of pointed to a couple of things in my article, which was around, the aging baby boomers and their travel and younger travelers as well. And ultimately what I was coming to was that transformative travel is entering the collective zeitgeist. That's kind of the way I was framing it. But I'd love to know, and Jake, maybe you can take that first. Why do you think 2026 is this year of transformative travel? What are the things that you have seen building up to this that all point to the fact that everyone's paying attention to this now?
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that it is happening at a time that, our society, our world is in a state of flux. It's quite disorienting right now in many ways, from digital addictions to the polarization that we witness across our social platforms and in our communities, across politics. I think that is ultimately inviting people to maybe shift their perspective on their life. And I think that moves them closer into a little bit more intentionality in terms of who they spend time with, how they spend their money, what are they going to do? How are they going to move from, like this idea of like spending time into investing in their time, right? As Joe likes to say, time well invested. And so that gets into travel. Travel is such a natural place for us to go and explore, who are we now? Who do we want to become? What's important to us, right? Sort of clean the slate, play with different parts of who we are. And so I think that these societal implications are really starting to open people up and shift how they're seeing themselves and how they fit into the world. And I think that's a really important thing. And I think it's something that Joe has been tuned into, and a lot of folks in our industry. But, going back to what I said, it goes back to like, how do you do that? What are the structure, steps, techniques and tactics that help people actually engage travel differently?
For sure. And one of the articles I was reading to start the year, because I call out those two things, and I'm keen to get your take on this, Joe, because you look at demographic factors, you're looking at shifting consumer behaviors, and these are things that I'm paying attention to as well on a commercial and marketing level. But yourself, from an academic perspective, and in writing a landmark book like this, I'm sure there's many things that you're looking at to give you. But as soon as I published that article to start the year, I started seeing more articles about Gen Z not buying houses, investing in traveling, putting more emphasis. And we've definitely seen that these next generations, and whether it be house prices out of reach, all these other factors that may be at play as well, and whether it's decided I'm not going to go the way of my parents and wait to retire, I'm going to do all that traveling as much as possible now. My wife and I were like that. I read the article out loud to my wife. She's like, I guess we're ahead of our time. we're a generation ahead of this next generation that's now saying that that's their number one priority. Like, it was 53% prefer to spend on travel, and it was like less than 40% a house, and then saving for retirement. Like, all these things are pointing in the same direction. So Joe, tell us from your vantage point, what are some of those factors that you see pointing in the direction of transformative economy?
Well, first I want to respond to one thing you said, which is the trend of 2026 and beyond. Because one of my fears is that people say, okay, this is a trend for 2026, and 2027 comes around and says, okay, we don't have to worry about that anymore. No, right? This, like the experience economy, we first published it in 1999. People are still discovering it today. It's still operative. Will continue to be operative even as we shift more and more into a transformation economy, and the same thing with transformations. So all of the things that you both identified, are exactly right. I'm working on one article with a professor friend from Spain, Marco Robledo, that should be published the next few months, on a consumer evolution model, which is taking a view of sort of a well-known framework in I guess I'd say sociological circles that talks about how people shift and how generations tend to shift from traditionalists to achievers to experientialists and then to transformationalists. And it's just sort of this natural flow that's going on. So what you're talking about, Dan, with your wife is like, okay, when you talk about, you're at that experientialist phase, right? It's like, we don't want to wait till retire. We want to travel now. We want to have all these experiences. And you see that especially with millennials and Generation Z in particular, because they're the first ones to grow up in the experience economy, in an economy where experiences really became the predominant economic offering. So that's a key factor. There are so many others, but I want to point out the other side of the equation, which is, we're talking about the demand side, but there's a supply side as well. And the supply side is companies recognize the opportunity to shift into first experiences and then transformations. I talk about every one of my books has a boogeyman, right? That you got to, like, this is the bad thing, and you got to do this in order to avoid that bad thing happening to you. And with both the experience economy and transformation economy, it's commoditization. The commoditization is like the law of gravity. If you do nothing else, then over time you'll be commoditized. So we've seen increasingly how goods and services have been commoditized. And so there's this opportunity to then go up to experiences, right? I either be commoditized, I develop better goods and services, or I shift up towards experiences. And then the co-equal factor with then the demand side again is that people want goods and services to be commoditized. They want to buy them at the lowest possible price and the greatest possible convenience. Why? So they can spend their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time on the experiences that they value, and then increasingly the transformative experiences that they value even higher, right? Where experiences, as Jake mentioned, alluded to, provide time well spent. Transformations provide time well invested, right? Because generally it's not one life-changing experience. Generally it's a series of experiences that get you from where you are today to what you want to become. And so that means that companies then have that opportunity to fulfill those needs, where increasingly, we all used to be responsible for making our own commodities, and farming and so forth. We all used to be responsible for making our goods, clothes, and so forth. You can still remember when people took home ec, right? So they're going to make their clothes when they grew up. And then services, but now we pay other people to do all these things. And we were always responsible for our own experiences, throwing our own birthday parties. Now we go someplace and pay somebody else to throw a birthday party for our kids. And the same thing with transformations. We're responsible we're basically our own general contractor, right? I want to get more fit, so commodities. I'm going to buy more organic produce and fruit, and I buy some books, to read about becoming more fit. I buy some fitness equipment. I buy services such as Fitbit or other apps to track what I'm doing. I go to a fitness center and pay a membership fee for the experience of being there. But then, hey, when I'm really serious, I might want to hire a personal trainer, right? One that truly understands what my aspirations are, doesn't just say, hey, go use do your reps and equipment, but adjust to what I'm doing, senses and responds to it. And if I'm falling down, right, because we often have regress that goes along with the progress, we'll sit on you and yell at you, whatever it takes psychologically to get that. And increasingly, one company can take all of that and be the general contractor for you, just like I would never want to be a general contractor on my house. I'm going to hire that out. You should hire it out more and more for your transformations as well.
For sure. No, that's a really good perspective. One other thing on this topic of timing, because I find this so fascinating, and because it's one of the things that when travel companies are seeing people choosing them and then trying to figure out, like, what is it that's resonating or that's working, or why are they choosing our resort over another? And one of the things that people are talking about in 2026 is wellness. And that's been an ongoing, to your point, Joe, I see this transformational conversation being the next 25 years, just like the experience economy was like the first 25. This is the next 25. 2026 is year one of kind of putting this on putting in the collective consciousness that this is what everyone needs to be focused on and where it needs to be headed. But a concept like wellness is one of those ones that it comes up year after year. But this year in particular, when you combine wellness with traveling for purpose and identity, you're seeing these things. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a great presentation at the Forbes Travel Guide Conference. The reason I want to reference that is because I want to give credit where credit is due. And they shared a couple of slides around the fact that, half of solo female travelers are 50 plus, they're widowed and divorced. And many of them are taking GLP-1. This was one of the interesting stats. And it was like, they're now feeling good about themselves. And so they are taking different types of trips. And I can see the lights going on around the room of all of these luxury hotels of kind of like, wait a second, that's why we're seeing those reservations or those customers come through our doors. And for me, that's always, as a marketer and someone that genuinely loves travel, I love to hear people then taking those types of trips. Now, wait a second, something's happening here. And I even have friends of ours, a good friend of ours, she's divorced. She's got and she is now going through this own transformation. She's 49 years old. She is like left her corporate job. She went on an Intrepid trip and she, to start the year. And I'm like, oh my God, I've been talking about this for a decade. So this is where you start to see the connections and the correlation between, what drives this behavior and then people actualizing it. Is there anything else? So my question to you guys about the timing, is there any other factors that we should be looking at or be aware of? And I'll go back to Jake on this, because you mentioned things about digital overload, feeling disconnected, that bipartisan nature of like what social media unfortunately does to wind us up and rally us against each other in so many ways. And I think more and more people are waking up to that and saying, I'm not going to participate on social. This trip is about myself, not about taking a selfie. Like I'm seeing a bit more of that now. There's a pushback towards, it's not everything you see on social media is true. So Jake, from your vantage point, what are some of the other factors from a societal point of view, consumer point of view, that you're seeing why customers are coming to you and saying we need this framework because our experiences today are not where are meeting our customers where they're at?
Yeah, there's a lot happening, right? And the mental health crisis, right? A lot of people feeling lonely. I mean, and I don't want this to seem like something that's that big and grandiose. It's very approachable. It can be playful. Travel is wonderful. But when travelers come to their hotel or their tour operator and their travel company, and they're bringing forth that they'd like to find more clarity, be more confident, become a better version of themselves, find more meaning and purpose in their lives. What do you do? Is it just the status quo? Or are you going to have to do something a little bit differently? Are you going to have to bring higher perspectives to how you design travel, how you engage, how you relate, how you guide and support? And so those travel companies that are on that leading edge, are the ones that, we need to be looking at and learning from, because it's very alive right now. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing in the industry is we're seeing people playing and toying with different approaches and different mindsets because it's that big of a shift that's happening. And, I go back to what Joe said around this isn't a trend. This is aligning with sort of universal way of living and being, right? We're just applying it to travel, and we're seeing like there's that innovation life cycle. There's the innovators and the early adopters, and then the bell curve drops down into the laggards. We're still very much in that early adopters, which I think is like 3.5% of the industry that's actually approaching this with a beginner's mind. How can I unlearn what I was doing in travel before and integrate in these new principles and practices?
That's really interesting. And so, Joe, this is actually a really good point for you to please weigh in on, which is this, one of the things I was keen to ask you was the intersection of that transformation economy and things like regenerative tourism, sustainability, these other things that we could actually point to are more trends. These are like, yes, there's an increase in awareness of sustainability, regenerative tourism. People are more conscientious now of not only the impact it's going to have on themselves, but also a positive impact on the environment, other communities. What I'm keen to ask you is like, when you look at the transformation economy, are those things tied together? Like, so is the transformation economy intersecting with regenerative tourism, this personal transformation, as well as, a strong desire for like the planet and other people? Are those connected in this realm of transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of that consumer evolution model that I mentioned earlier, where experientialists and especially transformationalists also have aspects of that of I care about the planet as opposed to just about me, and recognize that all transformation is identity change, right, which is something I got from Professor Susie Ross, who Jake knows as well, and it's really true. If If it's only a state change, it's merely a transition, right? If it's an identity change, either enhanced identity or new elements of identity, then it's a transformation. And increasingly, people have as part of their identity that I'm someone who helps the planet, that I'm someone who helps regenerate what I'm doing. And so there very much is an intertwining of those, that a lot of transformational travel is in fact recognizing, well, I don't just want to change myself. I want to be a contributor to what's going on in the destinations that I go. And it's one of the things that Jake and the TTC really focus on with destinations, is getting people to leave the place better than when they arrive. And it's the only thing that truly does make travel sustainable.
Well, one of the things that took me back when I was speaking to Michael Zeisser, and clearly he's one of your disciples, I would say, as far as the experience economy, right? And not only his investment, but also his thesis, which then applies to, he gave me, this is the part that took me back, is that he talked about investing in sustainable death. And I was like, I had not even heard that term before. And I was like, well, walk me through that. He'd mentioned it just before we hit record. I'm like, we have to talk about this. And I've subsequently looked it up to understand more about the fact that many people are making more conscious decisions, and especially given the baby boom generation, like are aware. And the other part we talked about, Joe, and is the fact that, you know, being inspired by an academic like Joseph Campbell, who had this idea of the hero's journey, all theories that you're familiar with, the one I'd highlighted to him along the idea of the hero's journey was this idea that you can look at any society and determine what they truly value by the height of the buildings in their community, right? If it's the church, or if it's, you know, a medieval castle, or if it's a bank. But the part about the hero's journey for me sounds inherently selfish, right? It's just like that you're out for yourself. Whereas actually and I wanted just to highlight that it's not
right,
just about
right.
the personal transformation, because it's about being interconnected with the community. And I find that so fascinating, because it is. So I just wanted to like underline that for all of our listeners. They don't get this wrong sense that like, wait, you want transformative travel, therefore we need to give you, you know, wellness and cushy hotel rooms. And it's just like, no, you're missing the point. That's not transformation.
Yeah. Campbell talked about where the hero comes back, he brings a boon with him, was the term he used. Right, he brings something with him that benefits the community once he comes back, and the fact that when he became a hero, I mean, think of the Lord of the Rings and so forth. It's like you're a hero, but not just to your own benefit. You're a hero because of how you affected the world. Right, maybe a small part of the world, but it's you contributed to human flourishing in the world, and that's what made you a hero. Otherwise, you're more of an anti-hero. If it's a selfish thing, it's just about me, and you don't care what happens to everybody else along with you.
Yeah, perfect. No, I appreciate clarifying that point. So, Jake, when we think about companies that are really leading the way now, I know you shared some examples of companies that have kind of gone through the framework, but clearly there are some of those companies within that are the most innovative and that are doing some of the most, I guess, groundbreaking work. And there was a couple that stood out to me, like Walking Mentorship. Tell us a little bit about some of those emerging models that you're seeing that are like already starting to take this concept to the next level.
Yeah. We mentioned Walking Mentorship, and they certainly, are North Stars, and we go out on their trips as a community just to experience, what they're offering. And, they've got what they call as a survival kit, right? And it is to take you to destination U, right? You are the destination. And so that programmatic structure, along with walking in nature, having rich conversations, takes them on that journey or down that path to bring that back. Another one that I'm seeing is Neotropic out of Ecuador. They just sent me a beta test of this really innovative survey and questionnaire to better understand who I am, what matters to me, what are my values, what am I seeking in my travel experiences, and so weaving in that technology in an effort to really cultivate what people are looking for, I think is a wonderful example of how this is playing out. And then we trained their guides in Galapagos and Amazon on the soft skills, how to integrate and how to engage travelers in a different way that establishes real connection, that creates safety, and then opens up the opportunity for more meaning and more real connection.
Well, I'm sure you're seeing companies that are trying to figure out within this, their use of technology, and whether it is, in the in-destination experience itself, sometimes the absence of technology is what gives them the freedom, the space to disconnect and to be able to actually have that downtime and be away from a screen for all the wonderful benefits we know to be true, that just actually being bored, can you imagine that? I would try and tell our kids, like, you imagine, like, the benefits of being bored. There are many. And so, but yeah, when it comes to technology, I want to ask you both about this. In 2026, we've been talking about AI now for nearly 3 years as an industry. I am a big advocate for AI in terms of technology and how it can be utilized. It's definitely changing the consumer journey. But the end of every keynote I give about AI, because I'm often asked to speak on this topic, because we do our AI summit, which I only created because I didn't think there was enough information out there for travel companies to figure out how they should be embracing this technology and where it's going to provide the most benefit and where they shouldn't allow their business to be changed by it. And I finish every presentation. My final thing is about AI is the good news is for the travel industry, like with the experience that we are so focused on is what is so special about us being human, is being able to connect in person, to be able to utilize all of our senses. And so I've actually highlighted that I think in many ways that it'll be the year of anti-AI for some travel companies, to highlight the fact that this is an escape away from technology, which is an easy trope to kind of jump on, because it's like, if you're fed up of hearing about it, come and take one of our trips. And but what I want to ask you both is that there is a role for technology to play. And I see that role for technology being very much in the pre-trip experience, the consumer journey, and how you're booking these trips and marketing. Again, there's so many different benefits. However, what I want to ask you both is where you see, and if you see, a role for technology, whether it's AI, personalization, or even some of the tools that you might be able to have access to. Do you see that playing into the on-trip experience? And I'll ask you that question first, Jake, and then I'm going to come back to you, Joe, on this one, because what I'd love to know from your vantage point as well is there a way to utilize the technology, to utilize the transformational economy framework in a purely digital way? And that's a slightly different question, I realize, but but Jake, tell us first from a travel industry point of view, what's your take on transformation and how it relates to technology?
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far as say that AI might be the best thing that ever happened to the travel industry, and I'll tell you why. Because it's going to force us to be human beings again. And if you're in the travel industry, you have a responsibility to steward and take care of people, right? A lot of us are drawn to hospitality. A lot of us are drawn to this work because we care, right? And so integrating AI and technology and finding that right balance, is going to allow you to focus on the things that matter the most. And a lot of that is just reactivating how do we relate with our guests and our travelers, and helping, not only the individual with, at the hotel, or the front desk person, or the guide, or the travel advisor, start to activate their own human intelligence, or whole body intelligence, head, heart, and gut, right? But how can you have travelers activate that as well, right? Because we're in this shift where, maybe this isn't as valuable as we think it is this day and age, so how do we start to rely on the things that make us uniquely human? And so, that travel is that space, right? Especially in the transformation economy. Explore new ways of being. Start to think of what an inner compass means. What is intuition? Should I go left or right here at this path, right? Like, these are some exciting things that are happening in the space that, technology is going to allow us to really deepen, which I'm excited about.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And that is certainly my hope. It is partly my expectation. So I want you to be 100% right about that. And I definitely want travel companies to take that advice and realize that, because this is so. But Joe, as it relates to your thinking with the transformation economy, where does technology apply in that? Especially in a year like we've had this run up, frothy stock markets, incredible valuations. The technology is definitely real, but we also live in a sort of a .com bubble that's happening with AI. And the question is, like, when people are listening to that, has that been corrected in 2026, or is the correction happening in 2027? That we don't know. Otherwise, we'd be having a different conversation. But obviously that technology is here now and is having an impact on people at the same time that you are, defining this new epoch of this transformative economy. So how does technology relate to that, and specifically AI?
Well, the core DNA of everything I talk about in the experience economy and the transformation economy is, in fact, out of my first book, Mass Customization, which is about efficiently serving customers uniquely. And I talked about commoditization being like the law of gravity. Well, customization is the antidote to commoditization. Customization lifts you up where you can't help but be differentiated because you're working with each individual customer on defining exactly what they want and then providing it. So the key to mass customization is modularity. I always like to point out Lego building bricks, right? It's always been the paragon of modularity because you can put them together in so many different ways. But what I discovered, maybe a decade ago, that there's another more powerful form of modularity, and that's digital modularity. It's zeros and ones, right? Anything you can put into zeros and ones, you can instantly change a 0 and 1 and vice versa. And so you can instantaneously customize for people with digital technology. And so that's so often it's not the experience itself they have, but it's how you put it all together. Like the Symphony example that I mentioned as a transformation platform. It's because it's all digital technology. I input a changing number based on how much you want to what you want to do in your life and legacy, and boom, instantly everything changes. And so it's a core element to that customization aspect of it. But then when it comes to AI, allows you to mass customize on steroids, get to know people on a very close individual basis, not necessarily through large language models, but through personal language models based off of each individual person. And so in particular, where it's going to be good at is I mentioned sensing and responding to what's actually going on during the full length of a transformation, and then be able to say, because of this clue I just got combined with that thing, then this person needs this sort of experience next rather than that sort of experience. And so that will be a very, very powerful thing. Some of those things AI can do itself. I do believe that AI will be very effective counselors and therapists. You may not be old enough, but you may have read about remember this personally. But Eliza, was this psychotherapist from like the 1960s, one of the first programs, and all it did was ask things like, how does that make you feel? Where they say, they take off something you said last, right? But people got actual value out of talking to this most simplest of programs. And imagine what is happening today. And of course, we got this problem where most AI today is a sycophant, that just mirrors back to you. And that's one of the problems when people get into, sort of a suicide loop where they're getting depressed and they echo it because the customer's always right in their view. And so therefore you really are depressed. Oh, you really should I end my life? Well, yeah, maybe that is the right thing to do. Right. And we got to avoid those sorts of things. But I think it'll be helpful in counseling, which is just one form of guiding.
We'll be right back.
Planning your next trip abroad? Stay connected the smart way with Olafly, the global leader in eSIMs for travelers. With coverage in over 200 destinations and a 4.6 out of 5 Trustpilot rating, Olafly is the go-to for international travel. Forget fumbling with SIM cards. Olafly's eSIM activates instantly with a QR code. You'll be online in just 2 minutes with unlimited data and no surprise roaming charges. Whether it's a short getaway, frequent business travel, or life as a digital nomad, Olafly has a plan for you. Get started today at esim.olafly.com. That's esim.olafly.com. In a world of endless travel options, how do you guarantee quality? The answer is curation, and it's the core of Civitatis, the leading marketplace for global tours and activities. Instead of just more options, their promise is more quality. Their experts handpick the best from over 90,000 activities in 4,000 destinations worldwide, ensuring every tour meets the highest standards of quality, availability, and price. They focus this winning strategy on capturing the world's fastest growing customer market, travelers from Latin America. By connecting these travelers to their global portfolio of experiences in native Spanish or Portuguese, Civitatis creates the powerful customer loyalty your business can count on. Their model is a proven formula for generating massive demand and driving industry-leading conversion. For the travel trade, the message is clear. Partnering with Civitatis is your strategy for capturing the massive outbound Latin American market and turning their growth into your revenue. Visit Civitatis.com for more details. Today, 65% of travel queries trigger an AI overview. If your brand isn't showing up there, you're losing bookings. It's that simple. This is the new reality that Propellic, the AI-first digital marketing agency for travel, helps brands master. Their entire focus is on delivering what matters, performance bookings, not just clicks. They've done the research on how AI is changing everything from search to purchase. You can find their groundbreaking new report right on their website. While you're there, join over 1,000 travel marketers by subscribing to their newsletter, The Navlog. Stay ahead of the curve. Visit Propellic.com.
And now, back to the show. One other thing for both of you, I want to just talk about the future to that point, Joe, about 2026 and beyond. For both TTC and the transformation economy, I know, Joe, you're on tour with your book, and we're going to highlight some of the details about that. I want to also highlight the plans with around TTC, because you kind of got a 10-year plan. And I really see that, Jake, you've been on this exciting journey, but I kind of think this is kind of that next step change for you and the team and the organization because of Joe's book being published, because of conversations like this happening. It's just like, hey, wait a second. We've been here all along. We've been waiting for the day that everyone starts paying attention to this. So tell us a little bit about what your plans are with TTC over the long term, and some of the things that specifically people should be paying attention to in 2026.
Yeah. Thank you. No doubt. Been waiting for a while. It's been like pushing a boulder up the hill, Dan, but it's coming, and couldn't be more excited about it. We're positioning for that, for this next stage. We're introducing new courses and connection opportunities for our membership and for those that are interested in going down this path. And our programs in the past have been pretty significant deep dives. And so if we're going to really guide this, be part of guiding this next stage, we got to be able to meet people where they're at. So we're introducing new content, synchronous, asynchronous, different topics. Some of it will be into like, how do you bring more on wonder into your itinerary? How do you coach and mentor? How do you do a good diagnosis? Why is regenerative development, or how does regenerative development create the fertile conditions for transformation? Right. So we're gonna be really expanding on that front. But what I'm really excited about is the consulting, and the private training, doing the deep dives with communities and destinations and hospitality companies that are ready to go down this path, because it is so much more than a half-day course or a 6-week course, right? Like some of these projects we've been working on for 18 months or longer. This is a process, and so we're excited to get back into that. One thing that I do want to mention that I think is really exciting is as a sign of this adoption is there's this one of the largest land conservation organizations is asked us to build an entire experience strategy based on transformative design and regenerative development to really to build eco camps across their collection of preserves. And because they recognize that in that model, not only are they delivering on their vision and mission, and they're attracting new audience and that Gen Z and millennials, but they're able to move people down that path that Joe talked about in terms of like, yeah, I enjoy time in nature, into I'm an activist, I'm a guardian, I'm a conservationist, I'm a donor, and so that's the sort of work that's really lighting me up and that I'm super excited about, and we'll continue to position ourselves for that at the TTC.
Well, the CEO of Onward, who Anissa, reached out after our last conversation, and this is where like it thrills me to no end when someone reaches out and says, "Oh my God, I love Jake. We've been working together for years. I'm so thrilled that he was on your show. We've been taking his techniques and applying it to all these trips that we plan for all these groups, and we've had so much success with it." And this is like, "Oh my God, this is fantastic." We met up at World Travel Market in London, and she was telling me more about it afterwards. She sent me a message to start off the new year, and I was like, and so that's where for me it becomes really meaningful, really impactful. And this is the magic behind a company like Onward that's able to then grow in the market, have success. And these groups don't know necessarily why it's happening. They just know that they love that it is happening, right? But it's because, but there's a lot of intentionality there that you've helped them shape about the experience. And so, Joe, obviously you've got a big year ahead. You're going to be traveling a lot. I want to make sure that, in addition to myself, I know many of our listeners are going to be reading your book, cherishing it, following up, posting. I felt I had a brief glimpse of what it would be like to be as, I'm not a writer, I'm a talker, so I'm not going in this direction. But even when people take a little excerpt of the post that I did and it meant something to them, and then they share that and say, you've got to read this article, I'm sure you're going to hear so much of that this year as you're traveling around. Tell us about your book launch, how things have gone, and then what also, some of the events to look forward to over the course of the year, and then of course where people should order their copy.
Well, I just had a book launch last month in the Netherlands for a European audience, and one this month in Minneapolis for the U.S. audience, and doing a number of things. I'm actually speaking at this year's Forbes Travel Guide Summit in Monaco. I don't know if you're going to be there. We get another chance to meet. But there are many other things that are lined up to help spread the word of what's going on. And it sort of gets back to what we were talking about with the hero's journey, right? Is I'm not encouraging people to read the book because I get royalties, or to hire me to speak because I get money, although I do. I want people to read the book and to help me work with them because I want to change the world myself, right? I want companies to recognize that why they exist is to foster human flourishing, and that transformations is the most direct way of being able to do that. All economic offerings foster human flourishing, but transformations do that most directly. There's opportunity there where they can be a positive force for change in the world, as business has always been. But we can now, in toto, not individual issues, but now we can amp that up even further. Right? If we recognize that we can transform people, who then transform the world themselves by greater and greater flourishing.
And there's one last question I have for each of you. Thank you for that. I'm going to make sure everyone will hear in my closing a little bit just about all the ways that you can connect with Joe, order the book, and continue to be a part of the conversation. But one of the things I wanted you guys to each close on, please, is one mindset shift that you believe the industry must now take as a result of this shift. And Joe already highlighted one that really stood out to me when we were together at the Arrival Conference, which was the idea of, looking at a travel guide, which is an essential part of the experience, and actually realizing they're the human touch point, and they're truly a guide. Even though I don't think, I saw it in the room, Joe, when you said that, and a couple people mentioned to me afterwards. Actually, it's in that episode where people were just like, the lights went on for people when you said that, a term that they just know so well, and just like, oh yeah, they're the guide, but it's just like, no, the guide. Like, it's just, think about what that means and how important that is. So that's already one you've highlighted with everyone, but I want each of you just to finish off by, sharing one of those mindset shifts that everyone should take away from this conversation, take away from your book or your work too, Jake. So maybe Jake, why don't you go first? What is one mindset shift you'd like to see our industry make in 2026?
Yeah, it would be to bring a beginner's mind to your work. And because I think that, as those that have read Joe's book, this is not just a small change. It's a paradigm shift, and to think that you can just continue to do the same and get different results and to meet the market demand is just not accurate, and you're going to fall behind. So bringing a beginner's mind and totally reevaluating how you see the opportunity that you have as a traveler or in the travel industry. To really deliver on helping people become better versions of themselves, contribute to communities, build a better society. And it does start with just being open and reevaluating how you're positioned in it and the opportunity that you have. So, go back, go within, go on your own transformative journey. Reevaluate. What are your values? What are your purpose? What is the meaning you want to get out? And how can you build a really thriving organization that is providing exceptional value, and then go from there.
Awesome. Thought-provoking, super helpful. And I like that idea of like just seeing it again with fresh eyes. So many people in their travel roles, they're in that forest, right? And they just need to take a step back and realize what you're in the business of doing. And I think that's what Joe's point did to the people in the room. And Joe, is there any additional mindset shift you'd encourage people to embrace in 2026?
Yeah, I would say that what you want to do is ascend to the proposition that you are in the transformation business. Not just the experiences. And it's okay. Thank you, Jay. It's okay to talk about experiences and continue to stage experiences, but ascend to the proposition that you're in the transformation business. And when you do that, everything else flows. Right? Everything else flows from that, and you will figure out how to make that succeed and even thrive in the transformation economy.
Fantastic. And we're going to leave it there because those are profound words that I think everyone should take away from this conversation, and a perfect way to close out season 6 of our podcast. I can't thank you both enough for rejoining us for this conversation. I think it's a perfect way to end this season. And I know we're going to continue talking about transformative travel in season 7, season 8, and probably for the next 25 years, Joe. So we got some runtime here, but I thank you both. Thank you, Joe, for joining us. Good luck with everything you have planned for this year.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jake, for everything you've contributed to making sure these conversations happen in the first place. And I couldn't be more thrilled for you and the team. So I wish you every success going forward. And thanks again for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Thanks for being a voice.
Thanks so much for joining us on our season finale of Travel Trends, season 6. Thanks again to Joe and Jake for joining us to close out this incredible season with this really special episode. I want to encourage everyone to order Joe Pine's new book. I can't wait to read it myself. It's now officially out. I'll be reading it shortly. I am going to be getting a signed copy from Joe, and I'm going to be ordering a number of copies for all of my friends and colleagues. This is a landmark book that, as you heard about on this podcast, we're going to be talking about for the next decade. So this is not just the year of transformative travel. This is the start of a whole new era, just like in 2000 with the experience economy. So I hope you got a lot of benefit from today's conversation with both Joe and Jake. And of course, you can find out more information about TTC at transformational.travel/get started if you want to take one of their courses, which will be a perfect complement with Joe's new book. So thanks again to Joe and Jake. And thanks to all of our listeners for being such an important part of the Travel Trends podcast and community. Thanks for all your feedback over the course of this season. Thanks again to all of our guests that joined us. Thanks to our sponsors that have supported our show and continue to. And I just want to make sure everyone marks their calendar for season 7 starting March 4th, 2026. Over the next couple of weeks, we will be releasing a number of spotlight episodes. We have 3 episodes a week now of Travel Trends in 2026. And these spotlight episodes, I absolutely love doing them, and they are going to be released every Thursday. So make sure you're subscribed on the streaming platform of your choice and continue to follow our spotlight episodes until we launch season 7 of Travel Trends in March, with themes including sun holidays, luxury hotels, agentic AI, and the return of experiences, which is where this conversation started with Joe and Jake, and then also a return to loyalty, a big topic that I want to focus more on in 2026. So lots to look forward to, as well as a number of one-off episodes and a special opening episode that I can't wait to share with everybody as we move into full video with the mentalist David Stryker. I'm looking forward to having a lot of fun in season 7 and continuing these conversations. Thanks again for joining us and for being such a key part of Travel Trends. And until we speak again, safe travels.